Good morning from the brutal capitalist dictatorship of Kuala Lumpur. As usual, I'm doing my 40-minute cardio before weights. And today I would like to talk to you about the new Western chauvinism. You know, it's funny because whenever you go on Twitter and you say something that people in the West disagree with, well, they might either call you an anti-Christian, godless degenerate, or they might start to bring up Marxist jargon in order to prove you wrong. As if Marx was the patron saint of truth in this world, right? So I find it very funny that people would assume that I was a Marxist just because I have comrade in my username. And people are always saying like, oh, did Marx say this, did Marx say that? And it's so funny because with or without Karl Marx, I would still be a socialist with or without Karl Marx. So I don't know why people think that, the only legitimate way to be a socialist is to be a Marxist. But I also think that this is another form of Western chauvinism, when you basically always have to resort to using Marx as your basis of argument against people from the global south who may or may not subscribe to Marxism. Now, I'm a Confucian socialist. You see, this is so horrifying to many communists, especially communists in the West, when I say that if a king were to treat his people fairly, if this king were to ensure a civilized standard of living to all of his rakyat or his citizens, and if this king were to practice benevolence and propriety, I would support this king. Whew! You have Marxists threatening to throw me into a gulag just for expressing an opinion. But is my take, by any stretch of the imagination, an extremist take? If I say that I support a benevolent king or a benevolent democratic leader, for example, I have no problem whatsoever with constitutional monarchies, unlike most dogmatic Marxists, simply because, monarchy is part of the Malaysian culture, just like monarchy is part of the Thai culture. You can't just talk about abolishing the monarchy when the monarchy is basically part of the cultural DNA of the people of this region. And recently I came under a lot of fire from American communists who asked me, like, what would Karl Marx think about land back? What would Friedrich Engels think about land back? The primary contradiction is class. Frankly, I really don't care what Karl Marx or Friedrich Engels would have thought of land back or LGBT people or what have you, because Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels were white Western European men from the Victorian era. Yes, I know it really hurts you like 1,000 hornets have stung you when I say that Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels are good thinkers, good writers, but no more important than anyone like Voltaire or Nietzsche or John Stuart Mill. To most people in the global south, they're just Western philosophers. They're not any more deserving of being put on any higher pedestal than someone like John Stuart Mill or Voltaire or Nietzsche or Adam Smith or, well, name any other Western philosopher. I don't know why even Asian socialists are attacking me and calling me a reactionary, just because I don't put white Western men on a pedestal, and I don't think that the opinions of white Western men are particularly any more important than the opinions of Native American tribal chiefs who may or may not believe in the end goal of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Now, when I say Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels were Western chauvinists, and we shouldn't take everything they say seriously, especially when they talk about issues concerning Asia and Africa. Now, this is not a personal attack on you as a Marxist. I'm just saying that Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels were white Western men from Europe. They were fit to talk about Europe, but they were not fit to talk about Asia. Because Marx himself believed that Asian modes of production were outmoded. For example, Marx believed that Asian political systems were outmoded, and he believed that, it took the Opium War in order to wake the Chinese up from their, in his words, their hereditary stupidity, the Chinese aristocracy. And he also believed that, the only way forward for the East would be to learn from Western thinkers. In a letter to Ghalib, an Indian philosopher, Marx actually advised him not to listen to Asian philosophers and try to go back to outmoded methods of the East. And he advised Ghalib to listen to more modern Western philosophers as a way for India to move forward, right? So isn't that a Western chauvinist take? Why can't we aspire for leaders like King Akbar of the Mughals? Why must we aspire for a Marxist leader like Joseph Stalin or Mao Zedong? Why? What makes them superior to people like Emperor Akbar or Han Wudi? Or think about any benevolent sultan or benevolent emperor you can think of. What's wrong with having a benevolent emperor? It's part of our culture in many parts of the world to have tribal chiefs or to have emperors. And it's very Western chauvinistic to think that, the only way forward is for society to progress towards a proletarian state. Well, not every society will be proletarian. Some societies are naturally agricultural. Are you saying that they are backward, they are wrong, because we want to plant rice, grow crops, and read Confucius? But some of these Westerners, including some of these right-wing MAGA communists, got so angry at me for saying that it doesn't matter whether Marx or Engels would have approved of Native American land back or Native American culture. It really doesn't matter. I still support it, regardless of what Marx or Engels think, because they are white. They were white Victorian men, after all. Well, I got called a race realist with leftist characteristics by one of these right-wing communists, which is an abhorrent kind of accusation against me, a vile and egregious insult to my character, because I have always been against race realism, and I have fought tooth and nail against identifying people with inherent characteristics. But at the same time, I don't like this enforcement of Marxism or enforcement of communism. For example, I find it to be very Eurocentric to say that the only way forward is Karl Marx's way, and there are not other ways that can also lead people to progress and prosperity. For example, a native tribal chief in America or native chief in Africa, for example, who's never read Karl Marx, could also have good ideas on how to run a society. Marxism does not have the monopoly on socialism, and I'm sick of people treating it as like the end-all of socialism, like anybody who's not a Marxist is a fake socialist. Well, you're not going to win friends that way, because you have to be willing to open your mind and collaborate with non-Marxian thinkers who may also share your vision of a happy and prosperous society, even if they don't agree with the means of getting there. Because the fact of the matter is that socialism did not originate with Marx. It's true that Marx outlined a certain scientific process like Newton did, but even without Newton, even without Marx, gravity might have been discovered by somebody in China or somebody in Africa. Now, the fact of the matter is that socialism did not originate with Friedrich Engels or Karl Marx. And people in Western countries especially are treating them as the patron saints of socialism, which I disagree with, because there are socialist tendencies in virtually every single culture. But some cultures are more socialist than others, like Native American culture. So when I say I'm a socialist with Confucian characteristics, what that means is that, I don't necessarily believe that there's going to be a dictatorship of the proletariat, but at the same time I believe in the people holding their leader accountable, in the sense that the leader is the boat and the people are water. Now, water can keep a boat afloat, but it also sinks the boat. And so the leader is beholden to the will of the people. The leader is, whether he be a prime minister, an emperor or king, the leader is basically a servant of the people. That is my vision as a Confucian socialist. But I don't really care whether there is or there isn't a king. But you remember the time when, Christianity, at least Romanized Christianity, used to be the end-all of whether a person was fit to be called civilized. It was used as synonymous with civilization, the word Christianity. We're past that colonialist era, so nobody takes Christianity, at least Romanized Christianity, that seriously anymore as a civilizational tool. But I think that the very same people who are spreading around Christianity as a civilizing tool, so to speak, are now doing the very same thing with Marxism. Basically, you can only be a civilized person or a civilized Asian or African if you agree with Karl Marx and if you basically have a Marxist society. And there will come a day when this newfound form of chauvinism will end up taking on imperialist characteristics, and eventually people are going to regard societies that reject the Marxian worldview as uncivilized. And that's why I think that the social chauvinists of yesterday, who are calling themselves devout Christians, are now the social chauvinists of today, who call themselves dogmatic Marxists. Thank you. Have a nice day.